Yeah, I'm trying. I'm really trying to help you guys. I need you guys to help me too. Like,
Yes, ma'am.
this is a team, but just don't
So
fucking let me know.
the reason
I had nothing to do with this act of like evil cruelty, whatever's happened here.
Everybody either says she's innocent or she's all bad, all good or all evil. We're not going to embark on a blame everything on her, but she's certainly not an innocent damsel. A mere pawn in a love story gone awry. Many insist she meant no harm but was foolishly in love. She would have nothing to do with murder or a missing person investigation. Why would she get herself entangled in that? Yet, my friends, that is exactly the predicament she found herself in. The mistress who had once complained that she was second in Chris's life was now lead in his prosecution. The prevalent narrative that's painted is portrayals of Nichol as a willingly, forthwith witness who had stepped forward offering assistance. Good Citizen Award. Yet more comprehensive look shows us that the CBI and other law enforcement agents got to work analyzing and embarking on that search for Chris Watts' mistress. When they did finally identify her, the initial attempts to reach her were unsuccessful until she eventually responded back. Whether she did that before or after she erased evidence and hindered the investigation, I guess we'll never know. What we do know is that at some point, either before or after that moment, that realization had to kick in and she made contact with law enforcement. We're going to embark on that mystery behind why Nichol was treated with such favor, why her dad seemed to run the show, and exactly what brought that power to the table. It sparked some of the strangest conspiracy theories ever associated with the case, and I think often this mystery factor keeps people intrigued and questioning the truth and coming back for more Watts. I like to focus more on the victims and discussing the familial parts of this case, but this is that last piece of the puzzle, and I can't leave you hanging without finally bringing you this enigma of an episode for an enigma of a mistress and bring you out of a vortex of conspiracy. Hold my beer. But guess what? I think it was Socrates who said, knowledge is an understanding how much you don't know. That part goes right here. The CBI's recently tracked her down. Nichol, the girlfriend, the lover of the dude, the suspect at the tippy top of the list in the disappearance of his wife and his 2 daughters, never ever came up in the interrogation rooms with Christopher Watts. How little, we don't know. That alibi, that interrogation, bro? The only acknowledgement of her existence came from a detective, smearing it in Watts' face that his omission about Nichol had stopped nothing. They already knew. And guess what? The agents didn't want to know more about Nikki. Not from Chris. You know why? Because his defense attorney will later use contradictions in their story and contradictions in in-case facts in order to tear her witness testimony apart. The less contradictions, the better as far as the state sees it, and that's exactly why, of all of the agents, Graham, Coder, and Agent Lee alike, nobody gave a shit to dive into that, not until after their conviction was in hand. Why not? Because it would contradict their star on the stand. And in the afternoon's glow, a secret revealed, affecting the course of a yet settled deal. A witness in the shadows, a truth to unseal, hoping with words that the jury might feel. FNK had any doubts about becoming that star witness, that number 1 in prosecution, that accessory charge, obstruction, or tampering with evidence would certainly have her rethinking her principles.
Most people think about witness protection. They immediately think of the federal program. There are actually smaller state-level programs that provide security for witnesses too. These programs, while not as extensive, they don't always necessitate the same elaborate planning. They might not all involve dramatic identity changes or relocations, but they do ensure measures are in place to protect witnesses from potential intimidation or harm. A good example is Colorado's own witness protection program, the Levad Marshall Fields and Javad Marshall Fields Witness Protection Program. While the federal program gets most of the attention, primarily controlled by none other than the CBI, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. They were the lead investigators in the Chris Watts case.
If a person was involved in the commission of the crime itself, the good old boys would have turned that into an opportunity to up that petty offense to a serious felony with the same penalties as the principal crime. That's right, wouldn't it be fun to be threatened with the triple homicide? Just kidding, it wouldn't. Oh, you knew that. Am I saying NK helped commit the crime? No. Does it matter? No, because the prosecution will still threaten you though. And NK broke the golden rule. That is, A, don't talk to the police, let your attorney speak to the police. B, if you do talk to police, you do not lie to police. They call that obstruction. If on the stand, perjury, false reporting, and more. As was promised, we're gonna flip that hat. It's not always big and dramatic like that. Nope, it's outside of the federal umbrella, the Colorado Witness Protection Program. It's not just for individuals that are in gangs or organized crime, I promise. It's for anyone who may be at risk due to the knowledge of a crime or their willingness to testify in court, or in situations like someone referred to as NK found herself in, where there was no gang or organized crime, but who could not extend that risk to someone who was involved with a man who the world now perceived as the devil who had murdered his wife and children in a horrific and disgusting domestic violent homicide. Testifying in court about such violence definitely qualifies for the program, especially those that have a high profile nature attached with those fears, supplemented with strangers who may sympathize with a convicted person or with a victim. Just the public attention and media scrutiny is enough to cause certain people mental health issues. Accompany this with harassment and, well, you have a risk to personal safety. The state finds this an important risk and an important fate. And now we'll have the state witness protection debate. It can provide a crucial lifeline, helps ensure that the state has the witnesses that it needs to put violent criminals behind bars. This can involve their physical safety, their relocation, being shielded from the media, sometimes completely new identities, help with transportation, new jobs, funds, and in a nutshell, you don't have to be a mob boss to qualify, and you don't have to be testifying against one.
Extra monitoring of jail visits and more chaperoning is likely because there's a protected witness tied to Chris's case. Chris's attorneys filed protective orders since his jail visits were being logged by the court and monitored by prosecution. The purpose of these protective orders was to prevent the court from accessing the privileged jail logs. Although the protective order was denied, the judge made a ruling to seal the records of attorney visits.
Rumor around town is that Chris Watts is here in Waupun. This wouldn't be the first time a high-profile murderer was moved to the Dodge County Correctional Institution. This is the same prison Ed Gein, the man who inspired the movie Psycho, was held. Department of Corrections reports show Stephen Avery is behind bars here.
Bureau of Investigation, and we're assisting the Frederick Police Department with this case involving Chris Watts. And this is Tim Martinez, also an agent at CBI. Sir, if you just introduce yourself.
Dwayne Kessinger. I'm Nicole's father.
Dwayne, what's your birthday?
November 3rd, 1958.
And home address for you, sir?
8801 West 65th Avenue.
Let's see.
And that's Arvada, 8004.
And cell phone or home phone or where?
720-982-4547.
Thank you. And Nicole, can you just introduce yourself for the recording?
Nichol Kessinger. Do you need all the other stuff?
Yes, please.
I live at 12255 Claude Court, Unit 612. phone number 720-656-9605.
Claude Court, is that? I think we determined it was North Glen, right? Do you know your zip code?
80249.
Okay. Can you speak up just a little bit so the recorder? I know you're tired and you're stressed, and we won't be here any longer than we have to be. You've already had a conversation with people before. You came here on your own free will to talk to us. We picked you up at your request and brought you here.
Nichol winds up having some advocate come over and speak to her. Kessinger's physical protection would commence later. She would meet assigned officers and agents at several different locations, and they would even provide her transportation. Escorts. Measures aimed to ensure that they got her to and fro her home and the police station in order to help them gather anything that her memory was willing to attribute to the campaign against her former lover, her former beau, and she wasn't the only one to enter the program though. In Kessinger's case, she was indeed going to be one of the only substantial sources of evidence that the prosecution was going to bring against Chris Watts. This obviously has the innate ability to be able to railroad this man, but also it has an innate ability to be able to kick his defense attorneys in the ass because defense teams hate nothing more than informants or protected witnesses, which lead to discovery fights and leaves them with a blind side and the prosecution with a leg up in any trial that follows. Wondering what kind of pressure they were going to put on Nichol? What exactly was she going to testify? And does it have something to do with that ping and the reason she has no alibi? We'll peek into it as we move further. And the defense is fighting the prosecution to know who the witness is with fervor. There weren't many hearings that actually had motions publicly filed to delve into, but just with a few that were able to get the subject at hand, which happens to be a piece of the puzzle, and we can now connect it to several parts, which is going to tune the out of this song. I believe NK is the smoking gun that defense is digging for so fervently in the following motion. Now the defense is forced to argue here very oddly because it's kind of insane for the prosecution to keep the autopsy from defense. But the prosecutor in the Chris Watts case was arguing that he needed to keep the autopsy out of discovery as well as out of the public view because he had a witness which could be compromised. The defense in this motion argues that they lack sufficient information to form a reasoned position on whether releasing the autopsy reports might taint any potential witness. Then they move on to panicking and asking the court for the prosecution to clarify if they intend to interview more witnesses and how the contents of the autopsy reports would even impact these potential witnesses. And defense is asking the court to grant a hearing to see if the government's position has merit about the autopsies disclosing something. And in the next motion, we'll see them move on to panic that the state is still pushing this witness who would be tainted, a secret witness, if you will. If we were studying a case that had a witness being protected by this program through the state of Colorado, we would have a case with lots of redacted paperwork. And guess what? Ding, ding, ding. What do we have for them, Johnny? We'd have a lot of court records with seals, limited public access, and a lot of oddities that we wouldn't be able to place without the right key to protect the confidentiality of the witness. And that's why, what did I say again? Oh yeah, we haven't heard from her since. I always find it ironic when people suggest that that might be because she's the one that actually has the most class out of the case. And I'm like, really? The girl who Googled how much Amber Fry made on her book? Okay, pretty exciting story. Due to what Cindy had said, I expected to see his attorney not trying for him at all. But I see a somewhat confused attorney who seems like a valiant bull ready to go, but who's being hit with some pretty peculiar tactics from the prosecution. And I think eventually it clicked. And I think somewhere in there, unfortunately, this bull lost all of his gusto and, well, Chris Watts' defense went to What's kind of crazy about this is it can be complicated in many states to even talk to a client about there being a protected witness in a case. Attorneys can often fight an attempt to get this witness's name, to get this witness included in discovery in some type of helpful way, but it will be redacted from their client. This could be the reason why when Cindy was asking his attorneys why they wouldn't fight, and she kept insisting that the state had no evidence, and the attorneys keep assuring her like they do have evidence, I promise, but they wouldn't tell her what any of it was. They probably found it difficult to tell Chris, but I think Chris kind of got savvy to it because he sounds like he kind of knows that she was the notch in his case during the jail phone call with his mom. So you see all of his family goes, no, but she didn't even say anything. As far as her testimony, you were totally good. She didn't even say anything to hurt you. And he just kind of dismisses it and they carry on about another convo. And yet another fight with the peculiar prosecutor, we see defense attorney's argument about the autopsy result getting a bit more defined by challenging the government's claim that releasing the autopsy results contain a witness. The defense implies a need for disclosure of these potential witnesses, and they argue that the autopsy results will likely be revealed in court, suggesting the witnesses and the autopsy should be disclosed. In many points, over and over again, the attorneys express their concern that the government may have undisclosed information and indirectly ask that the disclosure and the questioning of witnesses after the coroner's report is viewed will require a hearing because defense is not buying it, and it ends with the defense's request for disclosure of these potential witnesses and the argument that Watts has the right constitutionally to challenge the evidence and any witnesses against him. Here's another doozy that would have no explanation without this little key. A sealed record for more victims' compensation funds. Here is the actual Colorado law that would pertain to this, and as you can see, the Witness Protection Program and the Victims' Compensation and Victims' Advocacy Group go through the same fund. Now, sorry guys if that just makes a whole lot more sense than the Messianic theories about Kessinger and her dad, but okay, now this one threw me off for a while. I thought for sure if she had entered the Witness Protection Program, we would never see her actually publicly change her name. But get this, why not? A, it'd be a great way to throw people off, but B, the actual reason that I was able to discover that they would do this is because they need to actually alert the person's debtors once the case is cooled down and it's considered less of a risk for this to happen. So it's not unusual for a few years later for there to be a public order, but as you see via the news not covering it any further than there being a petition filed, we don't actually get to see what she's changing her name to, which would be the legal rules in a lot of states. However, they do have to give the public and her debtors an opportunity to notify her and be able to close out those debts. They don't care what your new name is. It could be Yahweh, God, Jehovah. FICO wants to know. The credit unions, they want to know. They ain't got no time for witness protection, yo. And I totally have to take some shame here, guys, because I wrote a really good write-up on Reddit. I was like, guys, I'm a paralegal. Here's how my logic's working here. And I kind of convinced those who were convinced of something witness protection-y back in the day. But I was like, this one thing was in my way. Fucking obstacles. But I have enough humility to be like, oops, my bad, y'all. And come on, my 1 through 10 was way better than all of these where they obviously marked that they were protecting the witness, no big deal. And now that I ran through that as absolutely fast and as least boring as I possibly could for you guys, we're gonna have to debate what exactly it was she was going to testify, and it seems to be something to do with the state of the girls' bodies or the manner of death, or it could be more completely fabricated bullshit like 95% of the stuff in the Watts crime and the Watts community rumor mill tends to be, is made thereof. It tends to be, look, it's mostly all shit, okay?
Prosecutors want their autopsy reports withheld for now because they say the information could taint witness testimony and have an impact on future jurors. Now, the court will have to make a decision on both of these issues in the next week.
Why couldn't we just write him a letter?
Day Shannon and the girls were found dead. Kessinger appeared distraught.
It's so sad, and she's pregnant.
And, you know, on our end, we
God,
didn't.
and they're so cute. They're so little. Like, wow.
Kessinger says she realized he'd been lying to her, and she called the Weld County Sheriff's Office the day he was arrested. She's one of the people listed on the prosecution's witness list. I just wanted to help, she said. With a pregnant woman and 2 children missing, I was going to do anything that I could.
I had like offhandedly mentioned to her a little bit. And I tried to like find whatever text you were talking about between my friend Charlotte and me with the harmony thing, and I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
If you and I mean her and I text so much though, so like if you find it and you show it to me, let me know. But it's just like, I mean, I was on that site, but it was never like worth a damn for me. So. It wasn't really something that I ever like discussed with her. However, when I was going back through there, I did realize that I had like offhandedly mentioned to her a little bit about Chris. I didn't tell her that I was like how deep the rabbit hole went on that, I guess you could say, but it was kind of vague, and she was asking a lot of questions at that point, but it was just like, oh, you know what, I did say something to her.
You guys, I think I just looked at the messages, and there was some like little bit of conversation regarding, yeah, he's got kids. There was some conversations about some sexual related stuff, and that was about it. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's it. But I mean, I did mention it to her, and honestly, we've talked since then, and I haven't even mentioned him, and that girl's so wrapped up in everything that's going on in her life. Like, I don't even think she realizes what's going on in the news. Okay. I don't even think she's going to connect the dots. Like, I would be surprised. Like, I honestly am convinced that if I don't say a word about it, I bet you she won't even bring him up.
Okay.
And even if she did, if I was just like, yeah, he's not around anymore in my life, like, I don't even think... I'm not concerned about her.
Okay.